Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Preaching to the Digital Hammurabi.
Hello, everyone.
Oh,
And
Oliver. He just started crying. I guess we can.
Excuse me.
Yeah. So, it's good to be back, everybody. It's been a bit of a day. I know we said we'd start at 7:30, but we wanted to do a little bit of house cleaning. So we have a little bit to talk about, but we wanted to make sure that on the calendar, since it said 7:30 on the calendar, that people that showed up at 7:30 would be showing up for the actual starting of the book club. So as many of you know, I had a debate last night. Skylar and I had with Praise I Am That I Am and Jill. And yeah, there you go. That was it was interesting, and there was an after show that was on Jay Passick's channel. So if you haven't gone over there to take a look at it, do so. It was a lot of fun. I was up, it turned out, for 24 hours by the end of it, which was interesting. So I'm a little tired. I haven't had an awful lot of sleep. But nonetheless, here we are. And, and here is Oliver. So, it is good to be back with you guys. The last time we did our... oh, there's an echo. Oh. Well, okay.
Is that better?
Yep, we'll try that. So, we have a new microphone and we're trying to work out some of the kinks. So hopefully that's better. Right.
I'm not putting you down to play. You can stay here. Yes.
Yeah. So, yes, it was painful. I see there in the side chat. Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. If you haven't seen the debate, it's over on Modern Day Debate. Please go over there and help James out. Take a look at the stream. Good, echo gone. Yeah, excellent. Well, Megan, you called that, so little smirk there. That's good.
Sorry.
No, it's good. Right.
So last time we did a live stream, we started with going through some of the Mesopotamian city laments, and we gave some historical background to. We read the Lament over Sumerian ore, and gave some of the historical background to the composition of that lament, information about what laments are used for. Maybe just to recap, Josh, you could do like a super quick 2-minute laments are and were used for.
Yeah.
And then we'll get into, we're going to be reading the Lament for Nippur. Yep.
And just as a one more thing to sort of close the close the loop on the whole so the slavery thing. So we released a video this morning on slavery. If you haven't seen it, please take a look. It's a lot of fun. I mean, it's not fun. It's that was the wrong word to describe it. It's fun to do the editing now. It's not a fun topic. At any rate. But there is a YouTuber named What Do You Meme who seems like a nice guy. And I think Skylar and I over on Skylar Fiction Channel are going to do some response videos to. He's done a 3-part series responding to Cosmic Skeptic. And so we're going to, we're going to press forward with that. So onward and upward, I will say. It's not the Lament over Nippur, although we said that 10,000 times when we were in coursework. Yes, it's the Lament over Nippur, Nippur. Poor guy. But, right, so Laments. Laments in Mesopotamia were used to appease the god. Poor guy. He's like, I know you guys are live. I want to see my people.
He's just jealous. It's been so long since he was in on a live stream.
Yeah, it has been. My hair was a lot shorter back then.
It was. Less sexy.
Oh, wow. It's
Damn it.
It's pretty rough.
That's not what I meant.
Man.
That's not what I meant.
I can never cut my hair again, I guess, now.
I'm gonna have to.
Yeah, please. So in ancient Mesopotamia, there was this idea that that the gods were very capricious, right? You see it in the mythology. If you look at the flood story, for example, in Atrahasis, or in the Sumerian flood story, this the gods are bringing about this destruction, and it seems like it's for very minimal reasons to wipe out all of humanity. So there was this idea that not only were the gods capricious, but there were certain times, certain events that would be a better catalyst, maybe.
Upset them more than others.
Yeah, upset them more than others. And these were considered kind of liminal times. So one that we always go to, sort of a stock. Excuse me, I'm still trying to get over this cold. Or whatever it is the destruction, to the tearing down to rebuild Sumerian temple, Mesopotamian temple. So, they were made of mud brick. They'd last for maybe 50 years or so before they had to be significantly redone. And so what you ended up having was, you'd have to take a section or the entirety of whatever, a temple down in order to put it back up or to reseal it. And this was thought to be a time that the god might be very upset and he might leave. Well, the problem is that if the god leaves, then all hell breaks loose, quite literally. And hi, buddy. You want some milk? I can't give you milk, but Mommy can. I probably shouldn't offer. Anyway.
I know, I asked him.
Oh, okay. But right, so if the god left, there would be tremendous upheaval. Everything would get destroyed, and so there was a priest. He was the Gala priest. There was probably more than one of them, but depending on the time, depending on the side of the city, whatever. But the Gala priest was there to recite these laments, and they were these literary texts, these liturgical texts would be a better way. And man, this is hard to do. And right.
So the laments describe how the city would be destroyed if the god abandoned it.
That is exactly right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So it'll say things like, the storm comes in and destroys everything, and all the buildings are destroyed, all the people are killed, invaders come in. It's all, obviously very, very bad. But they tend to be very repetitious, and they tend to, be designed for this type of, ritualistic presentation, right? So, okay. Those are regular laments. So they were recited when you rebuilt temples or restructured temples, or when the statues of the deities went on procession. When the gods go on procession outside of their temple, there's the thought maybe they'll leave. So there are all these rituals that are recited when you recover the kettle drum. At any rate. So, city laments are a special new genre that are developed, and excuse me, they incorporate the aspect of lamenting. So you see the same sort of crying out about the destruction over the city and all the people being killed. You see that aspect of the lament, the regular lament, being brought into this text. But you also have more specific actual historical names being brought in, particularly like the name of a king or something that makes it much more specific in time and place. In other words, it was used at in a specific context that was meant to be for that period. An example that we gave in our last hangout was, if you go to a Catholic Mass or an Anglican Raging Atheist. Sorry, I just caught that out of the corner of my eye. I saw my name. So if you go to, one of these services, you will often have a liturgy that's recited. The liturgies are very generic in the sense that you could repeat them. You could say them in 2015 and you could say them in 2045. And they tend to be generic enough that they don't that they're not tied to any one period. However, if you went to an Anglican service and they said in the liturgy Donald Trump, President Trump, then that would tie it to a very specific point, right? Okay, that's sort of a parallel here. You have more specificity in these city laments. So, that's what we're reading through these city laments. Now, these were texts that were copied during that they were incorporated into the school curriculum, if you want to call it that. I'll do a video on that at some point, the curriculum. But they were copied by scribal students in order to learn Sumerian, and so we see them in that context, and so they've come down to us. There are some major city laments. And I'll just read them out to you really quickly. You have the lament over Or. You have the lament over the destruction of Sumer and Or. The lament over Uruk. The lament over Nippur. And the lament over Eridu. These are all cities that had these specific this type of genre of text, this new genre of text that combines the liturgical and some of the more literary features of Sumerian texts. So, we read last time the lament over the destruction of Sumer and Or, which is a very long text. But one of the things that if you want to remember anything about it is that it ties in very nicely with the Sumerian king list. And you can go back and watch the previous video, the last Digital Hammurabi book club. But we read out parts of the Sumerian king list which talk about kingship coming down from heaven, going to a particular city, and being in that city for a period of time, and then being taken out of that city and set in another city. So the gods pick up kingship and put it down somewhere else, and they pick it up from there later and put it down in another city. So the right to rule essentially gets passed from city to city to city, and it's cyclical. It'll not strictly cyclical, but it comes back. So you have the city of Or reigns once, and then it goes somewhere else, and then it comes back to Or, and that's called the Or II period. And then it leaves there and it goes on, and then it comes back and it goes to Or again. That's called the Or III period. Okay. So in the lament over the destruction of Sumer and Or, the god Nana is crying out saying, "Why, Enlil, is my city being destroyed? Please, do something about this." And Enlil's response is, kingship is not given in perpetuity. It's not there forever. It goes, and then it goes to another city. So stop, lamenting, stop crying about the destruction of your city and the loss of kingship. Abandon your city, right? Because the decision's been made, and that was, I think, one of the big key points of that text, the lament over destruction of Sumer and Or. So this kingship moves around; it doesn't stay in one place. And the reason that that's important, is more than just obviously knowing that, is that they're making sense. They're using these texts to try to make sense of what's going on around them. So the Or III period, was a really important time. It was only about 100 years long. It lasted only about 100 years, but it was so important in Mesopotamian history. So many things happened with King Shulgi, and the things that he did, setting up this big bureaucratic system, lots of cuneiform tablets from that period. Big economic stuff, amongst other things. But that, when it fell, it was a big deal, particularly to the next dynasty that ruled, which is the Isin dynasty. And so Ishbiera, the first king, they watched this thing fall, right? They watched this big system fall. And when you get down to the time of this text that we're going to read today, the Nippur Lament, you have Idin Dagan, who's the third king of the Isin dynasty. I hope I'm remembering that correctly. It's been a little while since I've taken my comps. But
I don't think they'll take away the PhD.
Let's hope not.
For that.
So, Idin Dagan, there seems to be this period of a little bit of decline, maybe. We have some royal inscriptions, very few royal inscriptions. Megan could talk probably ad nauseum about that. But for the second ruler, and I'm blanking on his name, Ishbiera, Shualishu. Is it Shualishu the second one? Anyway. Ishbiera, Shualishu, Idin Dagan, Ishme Dagan, and then Libidishtar. Sorry, thank you. Okay, yeah, I'm 96.3% sure I'm right. Dr. Donner, if you're watching and I got it wrong, I'm really, really sorry. It's been a while. So, anyway, the city of Nippur was extraordinarily important. It was sort of the religious center. As Enlil city, which of course is a really big deal for these city laments, because Enlil is often the agent that's bringing about this destruction. So his city is a big deal. So as we read through this text, sort of pay attention to what it is. The question I think we should need to ask ourselves tonight is, what is it that this text is doing? We need to make that a new,
what is this text doing?
What is this text doing? We need to make that a new phrase. What is this text doing?
We should come up with a catchier way of saying that. Before we get into the Lament over Nippur, we do have some questions.
Oh, sure.
If you have questions, please put them in the side chat. We will do our best to get to them. We'll probably wait now until after the end of the reading. So, Chaos Scipio, with the new camera location, how is Pond going to get into the show? Pond has been rehomed. It was a very sad day. But
he's in a fantastic place, though.
Our friend Zoopater, the True Zoo, who you might see in the chat sometimes,
is
very
amazing.
Kindly offered to take him because he was a very, very unhappy cat.
He was very, very unhappy.
He did not like having a baby in the house because the baby
was chasing him. You see this scar right here?
So, very sadly, we did rehome Pond, but we get regular photographic updates showing him being pampered. He has his own bed. He gets lots of cuddles.
And he got this really cool trip out there. We paid a really nice couple to take him out there. We got text message updates about how things are going.
So Pond will sadly not be joining us, but I assure you he is very well and happy. Magnus Thirup Hansen, Gala were the priests, priestesses, likely queer holy people of Inanna primarily, were they not? Tricky.
Good question. So there's a publication that came out 2013, I think, but by Ori Gabai. It's about the Air Shema. I'm trying to remember what he called the book. That's terrible. It's one of these liturgical texts. And he goes into, it's a 2-volume publication, but he goes into tremendous detail about all aspects of the Gala priest and, all the different instruments that the Gala priest used.
But that is often said about them. You are thinking about the right group
Absolutely.
of people. Whether this is historically accurate is quite tricky to get to.
There are a couple of things that sort of feed this. One, you have literary texts that talk about, or hymns that talk about Inanna being the one who makes, men into women and women into men. A lot of cross-dressing sort of. Yeah, that's the best way I can describe it. You also have with the Gala priest, he uses a register of the Sumerian language that is called Emisal.
which is traditionally in literary texts reserved for women.
That's right.
And lamentation and mourning the dead, and that's traditionally a woman's job. That you have the question of, is this figure a man who has got womanly overtones? Are they transsexuals? Are they completely age-gendered?
Yeah. Actually, I wonder. Sorry, you go ahead. I'm looking for it.
Well, I have more questions that I can't answer. Nick J, did the Lamentation of Jeremiah ever get incorporated into a liturgy for the Jews?
Into a liturgy? You know, I should ask Brack that.
We will ask Brack.
Yeah.
I'll get back to you. And final question before we get going. Christopher Golding, was there one set of artifacts that all the cities recognized as being the symbol of kingship?
Yeah, I think it was the Shevet.
It was not the Shevet. That's a reference to the debate last night. I mean, you get some. It really varies by time period. You get some in some time periods there are specific hats that the king wears. There's specific dress that kind of marks out the king. And when you have like palace reliefs, the king is generally taller, bigger than other mortals. I don't know if there's like a specific symbol that.
I mean, they have the rod and the reel.
Yeah, the rod and the ring.
Yes. Yeah. You got Enlil Opie out there with his fishing pole. Sorry, God. Yeah, he's got a magazine. He's sitting there, fishing magazine. Sorry, the rod and the ring.
Yes,
that's what the god Sharmash uses.
Which you see again on a lot of reliefs. It's on the Stele of Hammurabi, for example. It is. It's traditionally referred to as like the symbols of kingship, but apart from that, I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
So there's a new, what was this, 2017, 18? It's recent.
Oh, and Magnus Thirp Hansen. Are the symbols of kingship supposed to be, or are they related to the May? Maybe. The May.
Nice.
That was not deliberate. The May are all kinds of different things. So kingship, like, would be one of them, but there are also things like metalsmithing and
heavy
adultery,
metalsmithing,
and sheep herding, and all of this other stuff. It's all of the things that you need to have a civilization. So kingship would be considered among the May, but I don't know if the I want to say rod and reel now. I don't know if the rod and the ring were specifically May. I'm not sure that that's being argued, or even how you would be able to get at that, because they're never described physically that I know
of. So just really quick, there's a new edited volume, came out in 2018. So Studies in Gender in the Ancient Near East, and I haven't read it yet. I've had my hands full of slavery. But lots and lots of articles in here about gender and sexuality in the Ancient Near East. So I suspect if you're interested in something even more recent than that 2013 publication, that'd be a good volume to get. It's published by Eisenbrauns, which is now
owned by
Penn State. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. So. It's still Eisenbrauns, but it's just owned by Penn. Shall we dive into the Lament of Nippur?
Yeah. By the way, I happened to catch some of your comments about the debate last night. Thank you for. I feel like it went really well, and I understand that praise feels like it went really well for him, and that's okay. That's okay. Okay. So the Lament over Nippur. So again, we're asking ourselves, what is this text doing? After the cattle pen had been built for the foremost divine powers, how did it become a haunted place? When will it be restored? Where once the brick of fate had been laid, the brick of fate is that first brick, if you read through the Gudea cylinders, the Gudea inscription, you can see that. by the way, in ETCSL. Maybe we'll put that link in a minute. But that first brick it's ritually formed. It's formed from a loam pit, or whatever. But it's, a whole ritual that goes along with it, and liturgical, ritual. God, I am just blanking on common words now, but liturgies are recited. All these, different liturgies are recited around it. Anyway, so this fated brick is that first brick. So where once the brick of fate had been laid, who scattered its divine powers? The lamentation is reprised. How did the storeroom of Nippur, the shrine Doranki, become a haunted place? When will it be restored? After Kior, the great place, had been built, after the brickwork of Acor had been built, after Ubshu Unkena had been built, after the shrine Egalmach had been built, how did they become haunted? When will they be restored? All these shrines, these holy places being destroyed. And the lament is, why are they destroyed? When are they going to be rebuilt? Pretty standard. How did the true city become empty? Its precious designs have been defiled. How were the city's festivals neglected? Its magnificent rites have been thrown into disorder. And just, if you think, because many of you are probably more familiar with this, during the end of the Neo-Babylonian period, where you have Nabonidus ruling, and Nabonidus kind of goes off and does his thing off to the west in the desert. If you guys are familiar with this, and when he comes back, the big complaint when Cyrus walks in, the story goes that when Cyrus came in 539. He came into people that were there, like the priesthood, with welcome, open arms. Please, come deliver us from, this guy who's been neglecting the rites, right? He's made it so the New Year's festival, the Akitu festival, can't be celebrated. He's really thrown things into disarray because he's gone. You need to have the king there, and he's instituted this emphasis, on a different deity. He's worshiping, the moon god, and anyway. So this is a big deal. You can see this. You can see this here.
We have a super chat from Enki25.
Hey.
With Dr. J on board, it couldn't be anything but good, no matter the platform.
Well, that was seductive.
I'm not doing seductive. I'm far too tired.
Oh, she's far too tired. All right. Well, I have to do something for him. Well, Enki 5 for $5. With Dr. J on board, I couldn't be anything but good, no matter what the platform. Okay. And he's here to help. It's because these things evolve. Sorry.
Thank you, Enki.
Thank you very much. It's very kind. How did the truce... Okay, sorry. Its magnificent rites have been thrown into disorder. In the heart of Nippur, where the divine powers were allotted and the black-headed people prolifically multiplied, the city's heart no longer revealed any sign of intelligence. There, where the Anuna used to give advice, where in Ubshu Unkena, the place for making great judgments, they no longer impart decisions or justice. Where its gods had established their dwellings, where their daily rations were offered, their daises erected, where the sacred royal offering and the evening meal in their great banquet hall were destined for the pouring out of choice beer and syrup, Nippur, the city where the black-headed people used to cool themselves in its spreading shade. In their dwellings, Enlil fell upon them as if they were criminals. It was he who sent them scattering, like a scattered herd of cattle. How long until its lady, the goddess Ninlil, would ask after the inner city, whose bitter tears were overwhelming? As though it were empty wasteland, no one enters that great temple, whose bustle of activity was famous. As for all the great rulers who increased the wealth of the city of Nippur, why did they disappear? And how long would Enlil neglect the land, where the black-headed people ate rich grass like sheep? Tears, lamentation, depression, and despair. How long would his spirit burn and his heart not be placated? Why were those who once played the Shem and Allah drums, these are part of this, lamentational, these are instruments of lamentation, spending their time in bitter lamenting. Why were the lamenters sitting in its brick buildings? They were bewailing the hardship which beset them.
So, sorry, in the past two sections, you can see really clearly that the city has been destroyed, it's wailing, and things are very bad, and it is most definitively Enlil's fault. He brought the destruction, he's angry, his spirit is burning and his heart is not placated, and the person speaking here is asking how long until the city's goddess will appeal on their behalf. Sorry, Karen.
Oh, good. The men whose wives had fallen, whose children had fallen, were singing, "Oh, our destroyed city! Their city gone, their homes abandoned. As those who were singing for the brick buildings of the good city, as the lamenters of wailing, like the foster children of an ecstatic, no longer knowing their own intelligence, the people were smitten, their minds thrown into disorder. The true temple wails bitterly." The first Kirugu built the temple, Ninlil. It's Gishgigal.
So if you've not read a text with us before, just quickly, a lot of these texts are fragmentary. They have breaks. So rather than gloss over it and give the impression that actually we have a more complete corpus than we actually do, we pause so you know that there is a break. And we are currently on line 52 for the Mad Hacker, going into 53 to 61. Do you mind if
I do.
You do? Okay.
Okay.
The true temple gave you only tears and lamentation. It sings a bitter song of the proper cleansing rites that are forgotten. The brickwork of Acor gave you only tears and lamentation. It sings a bitter song of the proper cleansing rites that are forgotten. It weeps bitter tears over the splendid rites and most precious plans which are desecrated. Its most sacred food rations neglected and into funeral offerings. It cries alas. The temple despairs of its divine powers, utterly cleansed, pure, hallowed, which are now defiled. The true temple, which it is bitter to enter on one's own, passes the time renewing its tears. Because the ceilings of the abundant materials stored in the temple have been broken open, they have placed the loads on the ground. Because the property in its well-tended storehouses has been sent back, it says, "What will they weigh out for me now?" Because the enemies who do not know good from evil have cut off all good things, it sings a bitter dirge. Because they have finished off its populace there like animals, it cries, "O my land." Because they have piled up the young women, young men and their little children like heaps of grain, it cries woe for them. Because they have splashed their blood on the ground like a rainstorm, there is no restraint to its crying. The temple, like a cow whose calf is cut off, groans bitterly to itself. It is grief-stricken, and the sweet-voiced lamenters, like nursemaids singing a lullaby, respond tearfully with its name. In anguish they bewail the fact that the city's lord has smashed heads there, that he has looked away from it and toward a foreign land instead. The true temple of all the countries which had come before him, what have the black-headed people, who had taken a true path, done regarding what they have forsaken? That their lord has become enraged with them and walks in anger. Second Kirugu. Its voices bitter cries because he has removed the great divine powers from within it. It is Gishgigal. So the Kirugu, we explained this last week, the laments are split into sections, like verses in a song or sections in a liturgy, a religious liturgy, and is it a call and response thing?
Yeah.
So you have...
Probably.
Probably. You have one person, the priest maybe, reciting the long bit, and then there's a response from someone else, which is the Kirugu and the Gishgigal.
Yeah, I mean, like a church.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Would you?
Yes. How long will the city's lord, who became angry with it, not turn to it, not say, alas, for it? Why did he cut off the road to its brickwork? He made the noisy pigeons fly away from their windows. Why did he transform the appearance of the temple, which knew voices, where they used to while away the days in sweet playing of the tiggy drums in the brick buildings? The temple, once a place to offer salutations in humility, is now as deathly silent as a temple which no one reveres. As though its purification priests' equipment were not utterly sacred, as though its cleansing rites did not bring calm in all countries, he has abandoned it, turned his breast away from it. Among dejection and lamentation, he has made it a sacrilege. After its fate, how long till his face will be streaked with teardrops? He rejected it thus, as though it were a blasphemy. Why has joy left its brickwork? Night and day he has filled its heart with tears. Even now he has made it foreign and a sacrilege. Its Lord, who has despoiled it like an evil wind, has destroyed that city and its temples. He has ripped out their foundations, struck them with an adze, killed wives and their children within it. He has turned that city into a deserted city. When would he restore its ancient property? Its possessions have been carried off by the wind. Enlil turned the city which used to be there into a city no longer. He made its mind wander. He threw its intelligence into disorder and made it haunted. He took away its food and its water. He brought to an end its days of familiarity with milk and with beer. The temple which he has made a sacrilege utters bitter lamentations. He has made its eyes blurred with tears. The lamenters who perform the dirges respond to it sorrowfully. No one touches the arm of the city's Lord, who has removed its divine powers. No one intercedes. Third Kirugu. How did Enlil make all his greatest divine powers fly away? No one ever touches his arm. No one ever intercedes. It's Gishgigal.
I am going down to my dirge singer of bitter fates, and I shall weep tearfully to him. Even now the lamenters who are expert in song make ululating wails over me. Now my people who are overcome by hardship voice laments for me one by one. Even now the places of refuge of my people, whose hearts are burning in dark distress, have been made known to me. My people whose hearts have been broken on the bitter way perform the lullabies of my young ones for me in tears. The well-built houses, ladies' dwellings, were falsely founded, and they may have been eroded by the winds. They are making a lament for me of how the foe has finished off my land. They are addressing the cries of my heart, overwhelmed with bitterness, in order to soothe it. They are beginning their laments about my lord Enlil. He will have mercy and compassion on me. Enlil, father of the black-headed people, he who will give the order to restore me. Fourth Kirugu. My heart is dark, I am destroyed. I am in chaos, I have been devastated. It's Gishgigal.
In the foremost brick buildings they sing that your fate is bitter. Even now to Enlil, who will accept your tears for you, weeping bitter tears of your own accord, speak supplications to your Lord himself concerning what he did to you, concerning that fate. Say to him, my Lord, how long? Look upon me with favor, my Lord. Say, why? Say, may your heart be soothed for me. Overturn this sacrilege for your own good. The day is. Say, re-enter for me your dwelling in my darkened shrines. Say, like a bright, cleansed, sacred day, give for your own good. Say, your misfortunes will rebuild it. Perhaps by this means I can make him have compassion and mercy for you. Depression has weakened your heart, but I am the one who has established good cheer for you. He will fix it forever, as your lot that you shall lift your head high. He will make good again the hostilities he is directing against you. The fifth Kirugu. In the city which does not know freedom, he struck them down thus. It's Gishgigal.
Even now your Lord has smitten the enemy fury for you. He has had mercy on you and decreed your fate. He has said enough, so that he has removed lamentation from your brick buildings. In good mood and with a joyful heart he has entered in there again for you. Ninurta, the mighty commissioner, has looked after things. He stood there before the hero, his provider Ishme-Dagon, and issued the command to him to completely rebuild the Acor, the most precious shrine. He has restored its ancient property. Enlil has ordered Ishme-Dagon to restore its ziggurat temple, to make it shine like the day, to make fitting the dais upon its platform. He has put back in their place the rites which the enemy disordered and desecrated, along with the scattered divine powers. He has given him his sacred, unchangeable decision that they should sanctify and purify again the cleansing rites which the enemy had put a stop to. He has told Ishme-Dagon, his beloved shepherd, that faultless bulls and faultless bucks should be slaughtered. When decrees the fate of the sacred royal offering place, he will offer salutations and stand there daily in supplication and prayer. 6th Kirugu. How long before you will rest at ease? It's Gishgigal. Before we start this next section, so that last section is kind of a turning point here. The lament has kind of gone from bewailing the fate of the city to like a joyful, Enlil has changed his mind, we're all going to be okay again. He's reinstituting through Ishme-Dagon, who is the king, under whom I'm assuming this particular lament was written. So through Ishme-Dagon...
Yeah, it's...
I mean,
It's tough, yeah.
Okay, we'll talk about that later. So Ishme-Dagon here is the king. He's viewed as kind of the person who is bringing about Enlil's commands and restoring the city. Do you want to do the next one? Or?
Oh, no, go ahead.
How long will the brickwork strain its eyes upwards in tears and lamentations? Even now your lord, the great mountain Enlil, supreme in the universe, has removed lamentation from your brick buildings and made favourable your humour. Now, city, your lord who has had compassion and mercy for you, Father Enlil, lord of all countries, who has commanded that you be restored, and the great mother Ninlil, who entreated him in prayer there, and the brickwork itself which said to him, steady the trembling of Nippur, and said to him, rebuild my women's quarters for me, re-establish my temples for me. He who mulled things over so that he came to a decision about them, Enlil, who found agreeable his command of true words, who beneficently entered the true temple which had suffered destruction, he himself is removing what he turned upon you in distress. Just as he silenced you, when he made joy enter again, he decreed as your fate the sound of choice beer and syrup being poured out to overflowing. Enough, it is time to stifle the lament, he said to you himself. Because you have been living in a state of neglect, Enlil, who has decreed your fate, has said, my city, you have placated my sacred heart towards you. He has returned to you. Nippur, you have placated my sacred heart towards you. He has returned to you. True city, he has decreed your great fate and made your reign long. Nippur, he has decreed your great fate and made your reign long. Enlil himself has commanded Ishme-Dagon that the Achor should shine like the day. Steady sunlight shines into the Kior. He has brought daylight in there again for you. Ninlil has decreed your fate in the Gagishua. Sorry.
This is one of those things we said last time where if you read it in the Sumerian, like if you're actually looking at it in Sumerian, at least in transliteration, it makes sense. But when they when they normalize it in an English text like this, it becomes very difficult to figure out how to read it.
Yes. Enlil and Ninlil together founded dioceses in the Achor. They dined there and enjoyed choice beer. They deliberated how to make the black-headed people secure in their dwellings. They have brought back to you the people who have been completely devastated. They have gathered back together the children whom they turned away from their mothers. The populace goes with you in their strongholds. Shine Nippur, the great mountain Enlil has returned to you. 7th Kirugu. How you suffer, how depression exhausts you. It's Gishgigal.
Even now they command Ishme-Dagon that Sumer and Akkad should be restored at your feet, that their scattered people should be returned to their nests. They have brought the news that the magnificent rites of Eridu would not be forgotten, its heart sending forth wisdom, so that good sense should be allotted. The Anuna, the lords who decree fates, order that Adab should be rebuilt, the city whose lady fashions living things, who promotes birthing. An and Enlil have advised that Or should be restored, founded in a pasture, its divine powers distinct from the rest. They command the prince of the city Larsa, the herald of the universe, the judge of the numerous people, to secure its foundations, to follow the proper path. They have taken a decision concerning Uruk-Kulaba, the sacred city, the handiwork of the gods, and restored it. They have brought news of the removal of all foes and enemies from the region of Zabala, the city where the mistress of heaven concentrated her forces. An and Enlil have looked with their beneficent gaze on Lagash, the mooring pole of heaven, and the shrine Girsu, established long ago. They have removed the treacherous Tidnum from the temple in Uma, Shengkor Shanga. That's got to be Shathriga. Okay. Which had been ill-treated. It is the great gods who have commanded that the foundations of Kish should be secured, at the edge of Sumer and Akkad, its domain superlative. Marada, the city in whose river water flows, in whose fields is fine grain, the Anuna, who took those things away from it, returned them to it again. Isin, the provisioner of the Anuna, rising high since times of old, An, Enlil, Enki, and Ninmach, you might have to read at the end of this, excuse me, have made its reign long. By their command, they have handed it over and expressed their approval. They have entrusted it to Ninurta, the champion, the strong hero. They have told Nanisana, the exalted child of An, the incantation priest of the land, to rest calmly in her sacred dwelling, Egalmach. They have told Damu, the chief barber of Nunamnir, healer of the living, to make the foreign countries bow at the feet of his father and mother. The 8th Kirugu. An, Enlil, Enki, and Ninmach have given their orders. It's Gishkigal. I'm going to grab some water.
Now see, Enlil has fixed a good day in the land. He has even now ordered the day for Nippur to raise its neck to heaven. He himself has provided a good day for the Acor to shine. He himself has raised up the day for the Kior's magnificent manifestation. He himself has restored the day for Sumer and Akkad to expand. He himself has set aside the day for houses to be built and storerooms to be enclosed. He himself has brought out for the day for seeds to sprout and living things to be born. He has brought out the day for building cattle pens and founding sheepfolds. Ewes have given birth in the folds, their lambs have filled the pens. The goats which bore kids have filled the folds. The ewes which flocked with their lambs have swelled the sheepfold. The goats which flocked with their kids have caused the pens to be widened. He himself has set the day for turning destruction to the good. He has, the day, evil. He has brought in Ishme-Dagan as assistance for the day for establishing justice in the land. 9th Kirugu. Although Sumer and Akkad have been desecrated by the foe, afterwards hearts were appeased, spirits soothed. All the great gods thus had compassion. They looked upon those sunk in exhaustion and brought them up out of it. They restored your city which had been razed to ruins. Enlil, king of all countries, restored its shining property which had been scattered, which had been devastated. There, where the populace rested in the cool after building their nests, in Nippur, the mountain of the greatest divine powers, from where they had taken an unfamiliar path, at Enlil's word to the Anuna, those very lords who determined the fates, ordered that the temples which they had forsaken and the jewels put there long ago, which had been carried off by the wind, should all be restored. He has established their dining in joy within. Enlil has given the command to Ishme-Dagan, his joyous, reverent, sacred officiant, who daily serves, to sanctify its food, to purify its water. He has commanded him to purify its defiled divine powers. He has put in order its disordered and scattered rites. He has put back in their place the most sacred things, neglected and defiled. He decrees as a fate the offering of daily rations and the grinding up of fine meal and flour. He has decided to make bread plentiful on the table, to make loaves numerous. 10th Kirugu. Father Enlil, the Lord whose command cannot be altered, Prince of all countries, has fixed among the black-headed people and commanded for their benefit a time when no one is to speak hostile words to another, when a son is to respect his father, a time to establish humility in the land, for the inferior to be as important as the mighty, a time when the younger brother, fearing his big brother, is to show humility, a time when the elder child is to treat the younger child reasonably and to pay heed to his words, a time to take neither weak nor strong away into captivity, but to serve with great acts of good, a time to travel the disordered roadways, to expurgate evil growths, a time when anyone is to go where they will, to hurl no insults at one's fellow, a time to go from one's own city to a foreign land, to have no fear on the plain, to perform no sacrilege, a time to remove bitterness from the land, to establish light therein, a time when darkness is to be lifted from the land, so that living things should rejoice. 11th Kirugu. Now see, after that time, Enlil, the prince who is full of pity, has been beneficent to his hero who has laid the brick. He put in order again for him the divine powers which had been desecrated by the enemy. He sanctified again the defiled rites for him. He purified its ziggurat temple and made it resplendent for him. Within he made abundance plentiful. He filled it with choice beer and syrup. He established there at that time the pleasing of hearts, the appeasing of spirits, the ameliorating of moods. Ishme-Dagon himself stood in prayer to Enlil and offered salutations. When he had begun the lament and spoken the supplication, the prince of all countries treated his body with oil of abundance as if it were the sweetest syrup. And his prayer was heard. Enlil looked upon him with favour, Ishme-Dagon, whose words bring Enlil pleasure, Enlil's constant attendant, with whose thoughts he agrees. Because the humble one prostrated himself in his devotions and served there, because he will entreat him to supplication and will do obeisance, because he will complete and honour the royal offering and will return, because he will keep watch over everything and will not be negligent, Enlil has promised to Ishme-Dagon his dominion of extended years. He promised him that he will be a man of preeminent kingship. He promised him that he will be a king whose reign is good. He promised him that he shall have the people inhabit safe dwellings. Enlil found agreement in what he had said to the numerous people. On the day of the decreeing fates, every part of Sumer and Akkad, among the black-headed people flocking like sheep, among their well-tended people, will praise forever the majesty of the great mountain Nunamnir, Enkar, weapon of the universe. It is his awe-inspiring way. The 12th Kirugu. And just quickly, we had a question halfway through when I was reading, who are the black-headed people? That is the term that the Mesopotamians used to refer to themselves. So it's like saying the British or the Americans, just Mesopotamians.
So I wanted to read a paragraph from the conclusion of Steve Tinney's book on the Nippur Lament on this particular text. And Steve Tinney did I think it's the current, there's no newer edition of this, the current sort of standard edition of the Nippur Lament. The fundamental driving force behind Nippur Lament's composition has been expressed throughout the previous discussion. The exaltation of Ishme-Dagon as savior and restorer of Nippur would have served to validate his claims as protector of the religious heritage of Sumer, and support his moves to extend the hegemony of Isin throughout the land. The rhetorical context of the royal literature within which Nippur Lament functioned is amply attested, and the play on Ishme-Dagon's legitimacy as restorer of Nippur, his being chosen by Enlil for the task in stark contrast to the actions of his unfortunate precursor Naram-Sin, along with the extensive litany of gods and cities invoked during the course of the composition, focus the text on this goal and are the prime constituents of his claim to power. In this respect, Nippur Lament provides an exceptionally clearly drawn example of a tradition of restoration rhetoric that recurs throughout the history of the ancient Near East. So, some of the takeaways, when you think about what is the text doing, what is the point, what is it trying to accomplish? This is royal rhetoric. Right, so we've seen. God, I'm really sorry. I just can't get rid of this thing. That's right. You see during the Or III period, you have this big buildup, and then the Or III period collapses, and now the Isin period goes through some difficult times. It appears, but then kind of comes out. It looks like Ishme-Dagon now is able to go and to do some things in the various cities, and I think we have a lot of royal inscriptions from Ishme-Dagon And so this text is now, wrestling with, this is part of this legitimacy. It's taking this lament genre, and it's taking this royal inscription or royal hymn genre and sort of wedding them together in a way to create this this type of composition that shows Ishme-Dagon to be the savior, the one that now, even though destruction has come, he is the one that is being called by Enlil. He's the restorer. He's the one that's being chosen. The kingship is now resting on him. And this is this royal ideology, this royal rhetoric. So it's important to think about that with all of these texts. During the debate last night, just because it ties into this, I think the question came up. Well, we know that in the Hebrew Bible, in the Pentateuch in particular, there are these commands that say, don't be like the nations around. You think about like the book of Leviticus, for example, and Leviticus 18, all the horrible things that the nations around do, and don't do those things. This is rhetoric, right? These, if you have an opinion of that text that says this is an inspired text that comes down from God, and so everything that is said in it that is from God is correct, then you have to take it that way, right? You have to say, well, the nations all around must have been awful. The problem is we know that they weren't in that way. And so you have to look at that and say, what is that text doing? What is Leviticus 18 doing? What is, what are these passages that talk about all the horrific things that all these other nations do? What is that text doing? And when you can engage with that, then you can come to the realization that this is an ancient Near Eastern text, just like Sennacherib had an ancient Near Eastern text, and he was trying to accomplish something, just like the writers were trying to accomplish something. They were doing something with that text.
We have a super chat from Christopher Hansen.
Oh, awesome.
I will let you.
Oh, yeah, so Christopher Hansen, I apologize, Christopher M. Hansen, for $2. Well, what's up, Megan and Josh? I hope you guys are okay. Well, there's no question that we are evolving in a way that is beneficial.
I'm going to be a pine cone.
Pine cones and elephants. If you believe that, well, that's just your religion.
So Magnus Thirup Hansen. It seems there's a lot of association between mountains and Enlil in this text. Is that a general thing with Enlil, with the gods, or just a coincidence? And if not, why or what does that mean?
So his main temple is the Akor. Kor means mountain, so A2 is temple. House. So it's the mountain house, mountain temple. So yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of, it's very astute that you picked up on that. There's lots of Enlil in the mountains, lots of associations there.
The mountains were also kind of
these big, powerful. They're the
impressive.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of there's nuance that takes place. The mountains are also the place that talk about the netherworld. So
mountains turn up a lot in Mesopotamian mythology and literature. But yes, you're right.
Very astute.
Here, it's with Enlil. Analysis Fields quotes a bit that we read, rebuild my women's quarters for me, reestablish my temples for me. Were the women separate from the men? That is a good question.
Yeah. I don't know that I could look in RLA. There's so much data when it comes to the ancient Near East, particularly when it comes to cuneiform culture, that saying anything, if you haven't done a lot of research in it, is tricky. This is talking about religious contexts.
Yeah, and you do get like the Gipar, isn't that the
But you also, I think we've got to be careful about saying anything. Take what we say at this stage.
Yeah, so we haven't done research into this, so we could be wrong. We could be speaking unknowingly about a single time period or single geographical location. It's difficult to make generalizations, but some religious areas seem to have been, I don't want to say nunneries, but you do seem to have some kind of segregation of religious personnel by gender.
Yeah, you have nunneries and then there are summaries. And
you're amazing and I love you.
That was so bad. I'm so sorry. It's problematic though. Questions like that are difficult because you have ostensibly 3,000 years of history that in this region, in these different periods, different times, and yet it's all considered Mesopotamian history. It's one of the reasons that Elio Oppenheim, and if you haven't watched this series on our channel, where we summarize his book,
Portrait of a Dead Civilization.
Yep, go watch it. It's awesome. But he wrote a chapter, which of course is a little extreme, but he says why a Mesopotamian religion cannot be written, and this is the point.
It's diverse and varied across time and space, and I mean Mesopotamian history is like 4,000 years, which is it's a very long time. But yes, sorry, very generally speaking, in religious context there was a separation of, I shouldn't say genders, I should say sexes. And don't quote me on this, and this is not what is being referred to in the Lament, but I think there were also specific women's quarters in domestic homes. But I don't know for certain, and I should look that up.
Sorry, too late now.
Magnus Thirup Hansen. Did these lamentations come from things that happened? Did cities get shattered and destroyed and its people scattered as a common thing? Or was this more a fear of what might happen?
Yes.
Both of those things.
Yeah. So there's this sort of... there's this thing that happens in Assyriology where people look at literary texts and they try to, really good scholars, and try to determine what is the historical event that stands behind this literary text. Sometimes you can get a little closer to saying, yeah, there's probably a specific event behind maybe this one. But in general, it's sort of like a flood story is probably a good example. There are floods. When you live on a floodplain and you have shifting water courses, cities get destroyed, man. That's what happens. Yep. So, the idea of there being a flood narrative and having to tie it to one catastrophic event, that's probably not, right? I'm remembering Mari, Mari was cut in half. Is it Margaron's book? Anyway, sorry.
Was Sippar cut in half, or did they deliberately build on two sides of the river?
I think they built on two sides. Okay.
But yes, cities did get destroyed, people scattered, and during different time periods you have different levels of upheaval and instability. You get a lot of textual evidence of wars between city-states. There's quite a famous conflict during the early dynastic period over land and water access, called the Lagash-Oma border conflict, which is fascinating, and we should do a video on that one day because that would be really cool. And then good. You have empires rising and falling, and when they rise, obviously when you expand the borders of your empire, you go and you conquer other cities and take their people captive, and then when they fall down again, marauding, the trope is that you get marauding people from outside coming down, and usually from the mountains and
the Amuru or the Gutians at the
so they're raiding and warfare, and it was at times very unstable and probably very unsettling. So this was real concerns.
But yes, to speak specifically of the second part, the laments proper talking about here, when you had a building a temple being reconstructed, those laments were specifically being recited as essentially saying to the deity, if you leave, this is what will happen, so please don't leave. So
yep. We had more questions. Trevor Lunn, this is a good question. For a sense of scale, a city would be how many people? Do we have any idea?
7.
Not 7. And
8.
I said that there's been a lot of work done estimating population size based on the hectare size of the city. And I said I couldn't remember any figures, and I was wondering if you could.
I always wanted to say, if I wasn't sure, what that term meant. I wanted to say, what the heck, tear? But, it never actually came up in class.
So there are various formula by which you can try and estimate a city's population.
You want to say first there's at least 7.
Yes, at least 7. Let's go with that. I don't know.
Yeah, there are studies have been done, but yes, I don't remember what the numbers are.
Again, I'm going to see that's a good thing to do. I will remember that and we will try and do some kind of video on it. Estimating city size. We had another couple of questions.
But it's not about the size of the city.
Not about the size of the city. Lisa for Truth is very upset that you didn't accidentally take your shirt off when you took your sweater off.
Oh, sorry.
Magnus Thirup Hansen, this isn't a question, but it's a good point and I want to make it again. What is this text doing is one of the foundational questions of every sort of study that includes texts, from philosophy to history to literature.
Yep.
Exactly.
So important.
Exactly.
And people don't ask that question. Mm-hmm. Gosh, and it's so frustrating because when you take a text at face value, you can really run into problems. I mean, and people do it all the time. And well, the text says it, so that we have to go with that. It's like, that's...
Because I can write a letter saying that I am the Queen of England.
Yes.
Just because I wrote it doesn't mean it's true. Kaya Scipio is saying that a city is a minimum of 1 spaceship.
Yes.
Which is, I think, actually the best unit of measurement for cities. We should now measure them in spaceships. I like that. So the first question, we had this a while ago and I had to save it. And I can't answer this. You might be able to. It's about Sumerian phonology. But if we can't, apologies. Juan A. Salinas Portal says, what is your opinion on the consonant S2? Would it be Su? Is it a syllable in your opinion, like an A, an I, or a U?
Sorry, I'm going to have to... Oh.
Sorry, it's a series... Oh, you can't
see
that. It's a series of posts. I don't know. Mainly because I don't really keep up with debates in Sumerian pronunciation. Because I'm a bad scholar. I wouldn't say bad scholar, I'm just not really a Sumerologist.
Okay, so a consonant... I'm not sure I understand the question. So a consonant can't be a syllable. Because syllables require a consonant now. So when you think about Sumerian and Akkadian, when they're written out syllabically, when signs are being used for syllabic value, you can have an S1 or an S2. You can have an esh or the shin sound or syllable. Ugh, consonant. God. But I don't know if you're asking, is it like a soft S pronunciation? I could, you know what? No, you go ahead and keep going.
That was it, actually.
Oh. I'll take a look and see what Jagersma, be interested to see what Jagersma says about that. Pronunciation is important.
We need to do also, I've added 8 videos to our list. We need to do a video on how we know about pronunciation because we get asked this an awful lot.
I can give a very...
You give a very brief...
Yeah. Pronunciation is tricky. So there's certain things that we can do. Proper nouns tend to really, really help with pronunciation because you can see in texts, if you've got a text that's in Akkadian and you have a text that's in Sumerian, and then maybe you have it's in Egyptian, and you have something in Hittite, you can look at proper nouns which tend to kind of keep their same sound because they're people's names or a place's name. And so you can look, you see this a lot in Greek in the later periods. And anyway, so that's one way of kind of getting at, generally speaking, how do they represent it in their language, and what's the overlap that you see, what's consistent there. The other thing that we do in Akkadian and Sumerian texts is I wrote my dissertation on Sumerian liturgical texts that were written in a syllabic style, which is rare and rare-ish. And so what we see is certain words are being... If I were to write the word dogs phonetically, I would write it D-O-G-Z. Dogs. Because we have a Z sound at the end. If we spelled it correctly, though, we would say D-O-G-S. Or we would write D-O-G-S. So they wrote these things out phonetically. They spelled them as they sounded. And so you can see in those places, you can also get at, and it's still tough and it's still debated, but you can get at the coloring of vowels. It's very complicated. Actually, one of the things that's sort of hotly debated in Assyriology is pronunciation of vowels. So Pascal Attinger down in Bern in Switzerland, brilliant scholar and a heck of a nice guy. He and oh boy, I'm blanking on her name.
Mittermeier?
Yeah, Mittermeier. Thank you. They wrote an Alte Babylonische Zeichenliste. It's a Old Babylonian sign list, and in it they have these. In a lot of places, the vowels are different than the standard way that we've read syllables in signs in the past, and so at the back of the book, there's anytime there's a differentiation, they give their evidence for why they think that is. And you get it from these lexical lists that have them written out syllabically or phonetically. You can get it from phonetic texts. Anyway, I delve into this a little bit in my dissertation. If anybody wants to be really bored, if anybody looking for that, you can go to our website and download my dissertation and read about the phonology. Maybe that doesn't bore you. Maybe that's exciting. I know that Jagersma really finds that stuff exciting. So. Anyway.
We have one more question and then we're going to call it a night because I don't know if Josh mentioned earlier, it was our nearly 12-year-old's birthday party today. So we had lots of people and lots of children and it was lots of fun, but I'm very tired. So we'll have one more question.
And I did.
Oh, and you were up until like 2 a.m. or something.
So Jay Pasek, I mentioned after the debate, opened up a hangout and did an after show, and I thought, well, I should probably go in there and talk a little bit or answer questions or whatever. And it was really, really nice and really, really fun. But I remember at one point I looked at the clock and I went, well, I have officially been up for 24 hours. So.
Yes. So one more question.
Sorry.
Thank you all for joining us, by the way. This has been a lot of fun. But I think this is an excellent question to end on. Magnus Thirup Hansen, do any of you have a favourite Sumerian god and why is it Inanna? That's a great question. I am actually very fond of Ishtar. I wrote my master's thesis on Ishtar in the Neo-Assyrian period. Oh, Tim, no, this is not from Before the Muses. It's an ETCSL one. I'll put the link back in the chat again.
Mine is Enki.
Why is it Enki? Is it because of his penis?
Yeah.
Or did you just want me to say penis?
Yes, it's not. That is funny though. Now I really enjoy watching Enki in the literary texts.
He's clever and tricky and he's like the Loki of Mesopotamia, and everyone loves Loki. So you've got to like Enki.
But he's also very, very prominent in incantations. So yeah, he's just Enki's. He's the wisdom. He's the wisdom.
I also like Ereshkigal, and she's the underworld.
You just like it because it sounds like erection. Erection Gal. That's probably what it is. Big. Okay.
She's the queen of the underworld, and she holds her own against Inanna, which is not an easy thing to do. And I feel kind of sorry for her. She's stuck all down there by herself.
And then Nergal doesn't,
and then her husband Nergal is a bit of a dick, if we're honest, and doesn't want to marry her.
But her hair's like leeks.
which also makes me feel I probably shouldn't pity the goddess of the underworld. She's going to smite me or something.
Smite.
But I think she's quite cool. And she is someone I would like to know.
You were like, about. You're cool. You're quite cool.
She's just very cool. So yeah, I mean, I like Ishtar. Stereotypically. She's pretty cool.
Indeed.
You know who else is cool? Gula. Healing goddess.
Gula.
She's cool because not only is she a healing goddess, but her her symbol is a dog.
It's true.
Which I think is awesome. She's the healing goddess with a pet dog.
That is one of my favorite incantations. The incantation against the black dog from the Old Assyrian period. I won't read it. We'll read it.
I like
sometime.
the incantation of the worm tooth thing.
I like the one about getting an erection.
Okay, and we've, in the past 3 minutes, made sure that this video will not be monetized. But thank you all so much for joining us. This was a lot of fun. Thank you also for the birthday wishes for Paige. We will pass those on. She will be thrilled and possibly embarrassed that we mentioned her on air. It's difficult to tell with 12-year-olds.
Indeed.
Sometimes she's very excited. Sometimes she's like, Dad.
Dad.
But this was wonderful. Thank you very much. I am going to go away and write down all of the videos that I said we'd make.
And then say, Josh, go make these.
Basically. Well, the ones I can't make. We don't have a book club next week, but the following week we will be doing the last of the Mesopotamian, the last of the Laments, but we'll actually be looking at biblical laments, so you can kind of get an idea of the whole corpus. Yep. And we've also had a lot of questions about our Learn to Read Sumerian series, so I think in the next week or so, maybe 2 weeks, Josh is going to do a live stream answering some of those.
Lesson 11 is done.
Yeah,
it just needs to be
edit it.
There's a little bit of editing needs to be done.
Yeah.
But
we're doing well.
But I'll do a live stream, and then you guys can just come in
And I can't believe I forgot this. We have an intern.
Oh yeah.
We have an intern for the summer. She is wonderful. She runs the Archaeological Fantasies podcast. If you don't know it, look at it, because if you like what we do, you'll love what she does. She does a lot of pseudo-archaeology debunking. So why they're not aliens, why Göbekli Tepe was built by humans, all kinds of fascinating stuff. So that's Fantasies or Archaeological Fantasies. She's also on Twitter, but she's going to be doing some really cool stuff for us over the summer as part of her master's program. So we have an intern. Yes, anyway, I don't think I have any more news, even last minute news. But thank you again for joining us. This was lovely.
Thank you guys. And remember,
until
next time, resist poor scholarship.
Always ask, how
do you know that? Bye guys.